Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of 9x90. Today, we have a very special guest because Miss Iva Kaufman has insisted that we quickly get this podcast episode recorded and out for all of you to see something that is amazing and absolutely newsworthy. You're going to be very excited. Today, I have John McMahon on. He thinks he's going to disappoint you. He doesn't realize how awesome he is, so don't worry, I'll help him. He built and exited 4 medtech companies from concept to acquisition with a combined valuation exceeding $500 million. He led the groundbreaking work in NB-UVB phototherapy, positioning Cytokind as a leader in the race to develop a breakthrough treatment for autoimmune diseases. Those of you thinking you're trapped with the carnivore diet, there's a new solution out there. Featured in the cover of Scientific American. For those of us, my fellow science nerds, this is probably very exciting to you. For pioneering research in phototherapy and multiple sclerosis, with $4 million in equity capital currently being raised for a pivotal FDA trial. Ladies and gents, please get
Hi, Addie. My parents would really been proud. That was a thoughtful introduction. Humbled to be on your show, and thank you for having me. Hello, everyone. As Addie mentioned, I'm the co-founder of Cytokind, and we're really a hybrid in the drug discovery field. We use a medical technology device, and then we stimulate people's immune system, and it leads to some drug discovery that we're really pioneering. And the device is a sun surrogate. It's narrowband UVB phototherapy, and we're taking it from its present residence in dermatology into autoimmune disease, and particularly multiple sclerosis.
That is incredible, because I personally know people who have, we're going to shorten multiple sclerosis to MS, for those of you who don't know the acronym. When you hear us say MS, that's what we're referring to. I personally know some people who have MS, and they have to import BPC 157 and inject it into their body right now in order to not have lesions developed on the brain.
It's there's a lot of unmet needs, and that's a really tremendous disease. We're hopeful that we can bring some relief to these patients and quickly.
Yeah, so let's dive into let's back up for a second, just dive into your background. You've built and exited 4 companies with over $500 million in combined valuation. What patterns or principles have consistently guided your success with these from concept to acquisition?
Well, the most important thing is have mentors, right? When you're starting. I was fortunate to be at Stanford at the initiation of what is now a global innovation phenomenon for health. It's a program called Biodesign. And Dr. Paul Yak was putting this program together and bringing engineers in and giving them access to the clinic. And, you know, that I still maintain that relationship 25 years later. And, you know, that mentorship and the folks that he surrounded us around as we were starting our first company, that's really led to successes. When you find core people that have the same values, the same mission, then success is possible. Not guaranteed, but you know, you end up on the rocks by making a few key higher mistakes. You know, that can end the story pretty quickly.
Oh, no, mentors are a total game changer. I recently approached one mentor he's an international bank president, absolutely like mover and shaker, commands thousands with one phone call. And I sent him something and I said, give me feedback. He's like, you're my goddaughter. I don't want to hurt your feelings. And I was like, look, I'd rather you rip this to shreds and I become the best faster than you be kind and me get worse feedback from people who actually don't care about me succeeding. And it's not going to be feedback to my face. It's going to be them making fun of me behind my back.
And how did that go?
Oh, that's how I do everything.
Okay.
I go to my godfathers and I say, look, please rip this apart. Please, because like you have people that when they rip apart your work and they give you feedback, they're doing it out of love. So they won't say this is disgusting. They'll say, I would use this color instead, or I would use this wording instead, or I would delete this. So you can either get people giving you that feedback in kindness, or you can get people saying it cruelly behind your back of like, oh my God, she has no idea what she's doing. But yeah.
I think embedded in that is that people are saying yes to giving you sincere feedback, right? You don't need them to say yes to you. Say yes to the question. Tell me what you think of this. And if you trust each other to be intellectually honest, then it may sting a little, but you know where it's coming from if it's negative criticism.
I think you hit the nail on the head there. Is what you need in order to be successful is you need intellectual honesty. And that's rare. That's very rare to find people who will be intellectually honest with you in a way that allows you to level up fast. So you have your mentor to thank for your successes.
I very much so. And when we started Cytokind, and I didn't realize the correlation. So that was 25 years ago. We started Cytokind right as the COVID came on board. And I was sitting on the board of a company from another Stanford biodesign fellow, Evan Anderson, was doing at-home phototherapy. And phototherapy, just to educate folks. So in the field of dermatology and in immunology, the nuance that sunlight is fundamental to human health has been known now for there are sun gods. It's been known for a long time.
2,000 years.
Yes. In 1903, it actually started to be used, what was recognized for one of the early Nobel Prizes in medicine about using narrow bands, at that time, ultraviolet light for tuberculosis. And it was a leading therapy for tuberculosis for decades. In psoriasis, it's very responsive. It's the frontline treatment for psoriasis. Before you get Humira, you are supposed to have tried lights and failed. And what it does is it's just fundamentally, we've evolved to be little solar panels for our immune system. Our skin is the front lines. It's aware of wherever we are. It's looking at all the insults. And it just got adapted to absorb this super high energy wavelength of light to stimulate the immune system. The biggest historical overlap for it would have been in the Industrial Revolution, when children started to get rickets, to a great deal in Northern Europe, because you had poor sunlight, you had a lot of coal, and you were putting children at work where they weren't going outside, overcast from pollution, and their bones wouldn't develop. So it's got a baseline of natural human health. And then when COVID came along, we were looking at it, particularly in psoriasis, and we recognized that in its fundamentals, it's not doing something on the skin that's curing your lesion in psoriasis. Your healthy skin is almost like the solar panel that's absorbing it. It stabilizes your immune system, and then you heal from the inside out. And that concept, when COVID came along, and we were in New York City when the first patients ended up at Columbia Hospital, the opportunity we looked at to be a citizen in healthcare for this was to translate this therapy from dermatology, where it's been a standard of care for decades, and bring it into the clinic for high-risk COVID patients. And I could tell you, Dr. Yak, from the earlier comment, was the second phone call I made to see what he thought about it, because the data just looked like if we could calm people's immune system, then the mortality risk of COVID, which is not from the virus, it's from your body's overreaction to the virus. If that was true, we should test it. And we ended up doing that in a collaboration with LSU and Baylor Infectious Disease. And that really kicked off the excellent results we had. That kicked off Cytokind, and Iva and Craig were with us from the start.
Oh, wow. Wow. Okay, so Cytokind is pioneering NB-UVB phototherapy for autoimmune diseases. What sparked that idea, and how did you know it had the potential to be a category-defining solution?
Well, I think that's, I would love to fulfill that promise. The original idea was conceptually along those lines, right? So we saw the first data that came out of Wuhan back when I didn't know, nobody knew, like, if you got COVID, does your arm fall off? I mean, it was really early on. You just knew there was some disease out there and people were canceling.
I was patient 0 in Florida, where my fingertips turned blue. My oxygen saturation level was 89. And they just gave me inhalers, antibiotics, steroids. They gave me like 5 different things. They were like, just see which one of these doesn't let you die. So I'm very, very, very familiar with the early days of COVID, because I was patient. I was in Virginia for a meeting when it was ground zero, and they were saying we don't need masks. Then I came to Florida where they didn't know what COVID was yet, and I was patient 0.
I'm glad you're here.
They gave me an inhaler. They gave me everything. They were like, what will help you to live?
and so your manifestation is consistent with that first data out of Wuhan, which said you get a trigger from the virus and your inflammation is way more than is necessary. So your lungs would fill up with fluid.
And those are all, like, I was drowning in my own body. It was so weird. I ended up stocking up on triacetyluridyne. Do you know triacetyluridyne? It's a specific chemical compound that is used to help, like, rebuild neural pathways while you're sleeping. But they found that it also drains fluid from your lungs. Isn't that wild?
So you remind me, something I've learned in this field is the field of immunology is just getting started.
Oh, it is.
There's so much to be learned. And I learned it from immunologists who would say, if you talk to an immunologist and they say they know what's going on, then you should probably stop listening to them. If you talk to an immunologist that says, we have some idea of what's going on, then that's the one you want to spend time with. So your lungs filled up, and that's that overreaction, and then you just can't get the oxygen, and then the wheels can come off. So somewhere else. So I'm glad you made it through. And so we looked at that signal, right? So that you say, well, how do you get from psoriasis to COVID? Well, you realize that psoriasis is an autoimmune disease. It's really people that manifests in a lesion on your skin, but you have underlying excess inflammation. Your system is running hot, and COVID was a mortal signature of running hot. And so everybody was trying to do their part. So we said, let's take these lights, do a randomized, double-blind, placebo-controlled, do some good medicine. Let's get in there, get some good data. And we were able to reduce the mortality, the 28-day mortality, by more than half in the patients that we treated. And that was just as the vaccine was coming on. So and so then everybody's like, well, we don't want to bring these lights in and put them over patients' beds, because the patients were so sick they couldn't get up. And so then we looked for another signal that really needed this attention. And multiple sclerosis, or MS, is a fascinating topic, in that there's really not much MS around the equator at all. It
Yeah.
just, if you've gotten a lot of sun in your youth, if you think about your immune system as a muscle, it's like you took it to the swimming pool. It's in good shape. You get through puberty with a good dose of sunlight. And we've had a couple decades where the sun has gotten a really bad rap. And we're hopefully going to, not only help patients, but we want to educate, good sun health, a diet of good sunlight. There's a healthy amount of sun and you should be out there getting it. So that, our story has, it touches a lot of aspects, some of which people can be proactive about.
I didn't even realize that until you mentioned it. Everyone I know that has MS, they are not from Florida. They're not from Texas. They're from the north.
Oh yeah, it's the folks that we hear from are predominantly, Syracuse has the highest in the U.S.
Oh, I believe. Yeah.
The upper half of the U.S. is twice as prevalent as the lower half of the U.S. So the U.S. is right around the line where it starts to come on board. Canada is higher. Scotland is the highest, and the Orkney Islands of Scotland are the highest of Scotland. And it's the same in the Southern Hemisphere. The further you get away, where Tasmania has the highest rates of it. So it's
this increase in tendency of, like, for example, I'm in my 30s. My kids are under the age of 10. There are a lot of families our age where both parents are working, and in the summer the kids are doing indoor camps. So their parents think they're sending them to a good indoor camp, but essentially they're lining them up to have a higher chance of MS as adults.
The data would show that's true, right? So the U.S. National Center for Pediatric MS is the study, which published a couple of years ago, showed that if your child spends less than 30 minutes on a weekend outside as a baseline, right, that risk of pediatric MS, and we think about it not as pediatric MS, that is an understimulated, underperforming, unfed immune system, right? So we think it's the risk is broader than MS, but the data for this study was just pediatric MS. So if you then spend 30 minutes to 60 minutes outside as a kid on the weekend, your risk of pediatric MS is cut in half from 30 more minutes of outside sun. And if you spend an hour or more outside, and it was pretty much plateaued, they looked at 1 hour, 2 hours, 3 hours, that was an 80% risk of MS. So that's a cultural thing, right? When we talk about analogies that we have evolved, when we talked about the Industrial Revolution, our community changed and our body's natural evolution was uncovered, right? We didn't realize we were absorbing this for good bone health and to avoid rickets. But as soon as you took it away, it showed up. So when we think about, since the 80s, when everyone said the sun was bad and you should just take lots of sunblock and be slathered, that's unfortunately a generation with some immune
problems.
Just immune risk, right? And what it manifests into, whether it's earlier presentation or something, that's our approach. So because we're not dermatologists, we're not immunologists. I'm not a doctor. We're aggregating the data that's out there, and epidemiological, clinical trial, graft versus host, and sepsis, it all drives to this stabilization that we have evolved. And if you look at the skin, there's more than a half dozen cells that are tuned and ready to oscillate at the UVB spectrum. And then they propagate into your body, whether it's nitric oxide, which lowers your blood pressure, serotonin, which feels good, endogenous vitamin D. Those things are all there, and independent specialties know them very well. How they work as a system, that functional health, that's really what we're all about at Cytokind.
That's wow. I didn't even think about it. My grandmother, I'm the middle of a huge family of 80 across like 5 generations. My grandmother did not believe in sunscreen. So we would, at the start of the summer in June, when the sun isn't that intense in the New York City area, we'd be outside without sunscreen, and we'd slowly get this base. So we never really needed like the 50 SPF. We had like maybe 4 SPF on, if anything. In Florida, I can't get away with that. If I try to go out in the sun, it's just so intense down here. I'll be a lobster. But I didn't even think about that having anything to do with like our immune systems now and whatnot. Wow, that's wild.
Yeah, there's a comedian up here, and he talks about when he was in. I live in New Hampshire, and so I have the lights just for health because we don't have a lot of UV, and so if you use as a metric enough natural sunlight to get your vitamin D levels stable, because we don't know the key biomarker yet, but we know vitamin D, naturally made vitamin D, not the pills, is a marker for your sun health, right? So if you look at that, then in October, from October on, even in Atlanta, there's not enough ultraviolet light to make a natural dose of vitamin D. So up here in New Hampshire, we lose it much earlier. And so your body has to store that signal and carry it on. And if it doesn't, then you're deficient and you can be at risk. So he said, back to the comedian, sorry. So the comedian's like, I don't understand. When we'd go outside, we'd be like, hey, do you need some 4? You look a little burned. You SPF, I don't need that 8. You can keep that stuff away from me now, right? And so everybody's got 50 or 100. And there's a lot of cultural things that go into it. But the big assumption was the benefits of vitamin D from the sun could just be in a pill, and if you just covered yourself up, you'd avoid the risks of sunspots or sunburn. And the data is, the pendulum is swinging back the other way.
Okay, so let's talk about Scientific American. So your work was recently featured on the cover of Scientific American. What does that recognition mean for Cytokind? And how has it impacted investor and scientific community interest in your innovation?
Well, first of all, we were blown away by the article. I've been telling the story, and this scientific writer named Rowan Jacobson comes on. He does some interviews. He talks to some people. He tells the story better than I've ever told it. And so kudos for Scientific American and for them on the work that they produced. That article starts off, it follows a patient, an MS patient that we ran into named Kathy Regan Young. She has a podcast, FUMS, where she's an advocate for patients with MS. And wow. Her experience is really documented in there. So MS has fatigue, and MS fatigue is not like any fatigue that regular people have. It can come on with very little warning. You have to sit down. If you're walking, you may not be able to walk. So it's really debilitating. So your world becomes smaller, right? Yeah. So you're talking about your friends that are worried about their brain lesions, which is certainly a part of MS, their relapses, which is a part of MS, but none of the drugs treats the fatigue. There's 26 approved FDA drugs for MS right now. Mm-hmm. So the data out of a trial in Australia by an immunologist who did this collaboration, got patients with neurology got patients from the dermatologist and neurologist and an immunologist, and they did a randomized trial, and they showed that using a therapy, which you would normally think is just for psoriasis, reduced the MS relapse rate. They were actually doing a CS, a clinically isolated syndrome. So it's an old name for MS, or previous name for MS. And most importantly, it showed the fatigue coming down in the patients. So their quality of life was being improved. And that is really something that we dug into. And Kathy talks about one of the collaborations we have with Octave Biosciences. So MS is a neurological condition. It's attacking your nerves, it's attacking your brain, it's attacking your other organs. You're just running hot, right? Your system's overexcited. And so this group called Octave Biosciences has developed a panel to really look specifically at MS, about the 18 biomarkers, which is how broad the system is. You need 18 inflammatory markers to really assess what you have. And we ran into them, and they collaborated with us, doctors in Australia who had done this trial, Dr. Prue Hart, and they showed, and it's in the article, how not only was she feeling better, which was first picked up by her friends and her children, because it's not like that. You're slowly getting your fatigues coming, and you're more positive. And then it was confirmed in the biomarkers that she took. So that story and the global leaders that are in this community, the investor community is someone we want to reach out with. And it's been a bit of a challenge because this is not a super expensive drug. So the unicorn opportunity isn't there. You say, well, why would I want to help cure somebody in an affordable product when I could treat their symptoms with an expensive product that they need the rest of their lives? That has certainly investor implications. But the scientific community it is super excited about this. Who we've really heard from the most, so the article came out a week ago, and is patients. I mean, we are inundated with patients with fatigue in MS, and we're here to try and help them. Now, this is off-label, so this is an out-of-pocket expense. It's until we run the bigger trial, we can't confirm it, which we look forward to do. But the safety profile of this is exceptional, right? So there's no melanoma risk documented from it, and so there's a really nice upside. And
and there's someone else I'm trying to think of who they push drugs through FDA trials faster. Dr. Scheller. Do you know Dr. Libya Scheller?
I do not.
She was an immunologist, Bayer executive. She also picks startups to invest in, biotech, medtech. So, okay. You can go back to what you're saying, but I just, when you said it's one of these things that patients are wanting, I'm thinking, like with a lot of pharmaceutical drugs, you want it to be patient-led adoption where patients are asking the doctors, then the doctors start to get to know about this cure, because then you don't have to hire pharmaceutical sales reps. You have it being a patient-led doctor adoption of this medication. But you do, if it's out of pocket, that's hard. So there's a few people that I think can get you connected to make it something that's FDA approved and covered by insurance faster.
Well, that's exactly, that would be a great output of this, is to have some of those conversations, because
I guess I would do that. She was like, D, you need him on your show, and now I'm understanding why.
So I can tell you we've made progress. We have met with the FDA, and they have a group called the Office of Pediatric Device Development.
Yep.
And we have met with them and submitted the existing data from just phase 1 studies and the risk factors for pediatric MS. And we believe and their feedback is the scientific merit is there. There's 3 check boxes for us to get the equivalent of an orphan drug indication. There's an orphan product indication. We could have that by the end of the year in parallel with the trial, with the funding that we have. So we've met with the FDA. We have their support. We're just sort of bandwidth limited to execute on that. So, you know, and in my past, we've had to meet with the FDA to get these medical devices approved. So that's a skill that we bring to, and also a team that we assemble around it. So it's not like we're in the dark on this. And then on the coverage side, so it is covered for many dermatological indications, psoriasis being the most common, atopic dermatitis or eczema as well. And Medicare covers it. So many patients with autoimmune diseases have other autoimmune diseases, we believe, because the underlying problem is your system is overreactive and it needs to be reset just to a healthy level. If we think about it, it's just not coming back down. If you have this much bandwidth in your immune system for every day to where you get poison ivy or bee sting or whatever, it goes up and it comes back down. And for these patients, it's just elevated. And when we look at longevity, that regulation also just slowly comes up. And if you don't have the room to recover, or you don't have the ability for your organs to rest because you're sort of overreactive, that's the beauty of this. So Medicare coverage, if you have MS and psoriasis, you're going to get covered. Kaiser Permanente, Blue Cross Blue Shield. And the reason the majors do, the alignment's there. The data for dermatology is so pristine that it will outperform Humira and the quality of life, and it will do it for 5% of the cost of Humira.
Wow.
So they Kaiser in particular, I know a patient that's daughter had eczema, went in for the second visit, and the lights showed up unannounced to their house. So Kaiser has a very aggressive program to get people to have at-home functional health.
So this helps eczema as well.
Oh yes, yeah, which is another skin manifestation of an underlying unstable immune system. Yeah. And what happened in particular for this child is they reached out to us. The mother actually had long COVID, and I started talking about the lights, and she goes, "We have a light." I go, "What are you doing with the light?" She said, "Kaiser sent it for my daughter, but we're sort of looking at it askance." Is she actually treated her torso? It recommended from doctors involved with our project is, especially for on the face where eczema can be really challenging.
Yeah, I have a friend who has it right here.
Yeah, so
on his neck, behind his ear and everything.
Yeah, so you don't need to shine it on that spot. In fact, that skin is pretty dysfunctional, just like it looks like. You actually want to use the healthy part of your skin to absorb this so it can calm your inflammation, and then you heal from the inside out. And that's exactly what happened to this young woman. And so she didn't light up her face, and she's doing great. Her mother says we're addicted to the light. So I don't know if I know that's good and stable, and they have talked about it in the summer if they need to back it off. And a lot of those things, if they have a physical manifestation, you can ask yourself, do I feel better in the summer? Do my symptoms come worse in late winter and spring, where the reserve of your stable immunity is waning away? And then you think, okay, maybe this is something that I should look at.
So this desire that everyone has to come to the Caribbean and South Florida in January, February, where they think it's something that's taught to them by marketing material and, the Caribbean's nice. it actually is a desire at a cellular level.
There is, which our colleague Richard Weller, who's head of dermatology in Edinburgh, Scotland, he talks about that in the UK system, they have so much backlog to treat their patients with narrowband UVB that most of that, when the winter comes and they all go on holiday, that's a health, they should, be able to deduct that, because there's so much health benefits
to doing that
for them. I mean, your blood pressure goes down not because you're looking at the ocean. With a project with Fresenius, who's the largest hemodialysis clinic in the U.S., hemodialysis patient gets their blood pressure checked 3 times a day or 3 times a week, every week. They took 3 years of patients from their centers, 2,000 centers around the U.S., and they showed that their blood pressure is down in the summer and up in the winter. And that's a nitric oxide release from the UV. And that's just from your regular everyday living. And if you have darker skin, which absorbs less, then you have higher blood pressure and the oscillation is smaller. So you would need a larger dose for darker skin. But that data was 300,000 patients followed for 3 years. So, yeah, so Dr. Weller says, while people are backlogged in their healthcare system, they can just go on holiday and come back in better shape. So, yes, we should all be able to write that off our
your Caribbean vacation should be a health expense, you guys. Yeah. So you've assembled a global team of scientists around this bold vision. What's your approach to attracting top-tier talent and keeping them aligned around this ambitious mission you have?
That is a great question. And I would say, if I think, I don't want to, I don't know if I should tell it by an example. So there's a gentleman named Peter Wolf. He's the first, he's out of the Graz University in Austria. And he was the first person I ever knew that had this title, photoimmunologist. And I'm like, what in the world? I go, but I'm like, if that guy's got that title, this was early in COVID. I'm like, I got to talk to this guy. And so it's in Austria. So I would have to, my Austrian is as good as my Japanese. So he wasn't responding to any emails. I tried to find people that knew him. I couldn't track him down. I would call 3 or 4 times a week. If somebody knew English that answered the university webpage or answering, then I could get sent to the department. Then I need someone there to know English. So it took about 5 weeks. And but he's fantastic. He was the first one to say, this is their immune system will stabilize. Absolutely. We just don't know if it's going to do it enough to show up clinically. Right. So you can look at the biomarkers. Do you have less inflammation? Well, are you sleeping better? That's what you want to know. And so that, those insights, and then, you try and respect every introduction you get, because it's a small community and you get the next one. So there's a gentleman who's been nominated for the Nobel a number of times for his vitamin D research. And I tracked down the number to his lab and I called him and he answered the phone. And, I was prepared, but it's not a big field. So it's not like there's thousands of photoimmunologists around the world. But you just be sincere with where you're coming from, do your homework. And it's so far that sincerity and has paid off, and we've been able to keep a group together.
Yeah. Okay. So what I'm hearing is you're passionate about this specific cure, and what you're doing is finding other people who are passionate about this as well. and there's just naturally this desire to work together. If you're very passionate about seeing something through and you find someone else who's equally passionate about it, you're drawn to each other.
Yeah, I think you've got a really good point there. So what I know when I talk to any of these folks is they are experts and spent their careers at a very detailed level, either immunological, dermatological, vitamin D, preclinical work, lymphatic systems, right? What I bring to the game is I'm not expert at any of that, but I see. That's why an email doesn't work, right? So we got to engage and show this bigger vision that each one of your specialties has an interlacing piece that's going to uncover why sunlight is so amazingly stabilizing to the immune system. And if we can take that bit of expertise and weave it together, we talk about somebody like a dermatologist says, I know all of these things when you light up the skin with narrowband UVB. I know exactly how things leave and go to the lymphatic system. And I'm like, but now you got to go talk to a lymphatic expert about what the next step is.
Yeah.
Right. So what we've done is really try and build a platform, an intellectual and research platform where we can uncover these key insights. And what's really been the backbone of that is people have shared their actual blood samples from their trials and let us do our part and do high-level metabolic and proteomic assays from different diseases to find the common signals.
Wow.
And that's what we've been doing to honor their commitment to us. And so that's True Heart from Australia, our own COVID data here in the US, hypertension data out of Scotland. And so we're just trying to be the glue, and it's that vision that together we are 10 times stronger than we are alone. And that's let us put these people together now to test our hypotheses. That's what we're raising money for, right? We can help one-off patients. We can help the 90 phone calls that we've gotten in the past 4 days from the article. If we want to really do a fundamental shift, then we have to prospectively do this trial and test what we've uncovered now, and then we can bring that to market.
Okay, so you essentially already started to answer the next question, which was looking ahead, what are the next critical milestones for Cytokind, both in terms of clinical trials and scaling the business?
So I'll answer that in sort of reverse. So the business side of getting access of lights to patients, we're really fortunate. The global leader in lights had donated lights to us in COVID, right? They were like, what are you trying to do? This is really far out there, but here we've maintained that relationship. So from a business standpoint, we are a US distributor now for them, for these patients that are reaching out through us. And that company is now called Photera. They did a branding change from Davlin, and they are global. They are in 70 countries. I didn't know there were 70 countries, right? So every time we tell this story, our relationship with them and their dedication as the global leader in the lights means it can touch more patients, right? So that's that scaling. As a distributor, we can help out, and that can drive some revenue. But what we need to do to really turn the switch to get to a tipping point is we need to have new FDA indications for autoimmune diseases. And that comes in the form of the trial. So we've got a $4 million budget. We have 3 of the top tier centers here in the US, the southernmost being in Virginia, but I grew up there, so I want to make sure some of my community could get served. But in Milwaukee, Ahmed Obadat, and Dr. Bazanov, Nina Bazanov out of Idaho are some of the centers that we've looked at, and that we've got got contracts and budgets worked out for a $4 million trial, and we will validate the hypotheses, so good evidence-based medicine, of what we've seen across all of these signals already. And that will lead to an FDA indication. And the economics, with the indication in hand, the economics isn't us selling to a patient. The economics then become us selling to Anthem, to Kaiser, because they see not only the affordability is going to make it in line with the healthcare insurer, right? So then you're proactively going to be selling. If they have MS patients, they're going to be providing lights to them for free, just like they do for psoriasis. Medicare is already covered for psoriasis, so we would open those channels up. What we want to do, because MS is the strongest signal, is confirm that in a couple other diseases we're looking at. We'll save that. But we're looking for wherever this signal is. And then that really scales the business of the lights. And every time we touch a patient, we're doing blood panels. And that is the unicorn opportunity for us to uncover the fundamental, naturally produced metabolite. Like Ozempic is a metabolite, right? Your body makes that. You just don't produce enough of it based on lifestyle. And so you can now, you can supplement it, and it's changing health around the world. Yeah. We believe there's a similar naturally produced compound that has yet to be identified that everyone thought was vitamin D. And the way we find it out is the path we're taking. We're helping patients, they're informing us, and we're doing multi-spectrum analysis of the blood from what we see now. Then we're targeting from the next patients. We'll know exactly what to look with, much better resolution. And that's the big win. That's a big opportunity for an investor, the community, and the business.
Well, so I think investors will also see there's just a huge financial potential here for them for the return on investment. Merely if you're looking at those patients who have eczema and psoriasis, they're going to get the ROI. And then to the feel-good innovation side is that this can also be doing things for other types of autoimmune diseases. So you already have the validation, you already have the market need. They can already Google and see the tremendous market size and the market potential with those sure bets of your light. And now you're saying, hey, there's even more illnesses that this can potentially cure that we're going to test as well. So you're essentially, once you get these different approvals, you're already cash flow positive running out the gate. It's just a matter of how many more markets can you touch?
I think your branding expertise is coming through in this conversation. We think there's an underlying fundamental signal for most of autoimmunity. And if we can uncover that, then the scale becomes a pharmaceutical license partnership up license. So if you look at like the 12th deal for the 12th version of Ozempic, which we looked up last year, that was sort of a $500 million up front and a $900 million back end, right? From a study that was still in animals. So we are in humans, we are in sick humans, we are getting real data. And if you look like you're talking to AstraZeneca, they say the number one driver they need for their drug discovery is good input. They need good, solid data from patient studies. And that's really what our whole career, my career has been. When you come off the napkin and you end up FDA approved, you've got to go through animal studies, bench studies, and human trials. And we're leapfrogging that because we're doing this translation from the safety profile from dermatology, and we're bringing it into autoimmunity. And we're super pumped up to do it. We have some great folks waiting for us to be able to turn the engine on full speed.
Yeah, absolutely. And you'll probably have a few more after this. So what is the best way for investors to get in touch with you? Usually we do not put your personal email because you'll get hundreds of emails that are irrelevant and relevant. Do you have like an assistant that they can email? Do you have like a form on a website? Do you have social media gatekeepers?
We have all of those. I would just, I'll just give the company email is the best.
Yep.
I've yet to be involved in a project when I've been overwhelmed, but as I said, looking at your branding profile, we might have an interesting week in a couple of weeks.
Yeah.
So it's J McMahon, MacMahon at Cytokind, CYTOKIND.net.
All right. And you all will be able to see that in the show notes.
Great. Well, thank you for doing this. This is real. I'm really happy to speak to you, and I'm getting just charged up just from your questions, just to hear it told again. And
we can are we able to embed your Scientific American article into the webpage?
It is not behind a paywall right now.
So we can link to it, and then if you have a deck or a pitch deck or something that you want to give to investors, we'll embed that in the webpage as well for everyone that's interested in seeing more information.
Great. Have you? So it is not behind a paywall to date.
Okay. Perfect. So we will link to it. If it is behind a paywall, when you all go to see it, we're sorry. You could probably go to ChatGPT and ask questions. We will put as much information as you're able to for investors who are interested into his webpage on 9x90, as we've done with all the investment opportunities that we support and endorse and believe in and think that should be in front of you guys on this show. John, thank you so much for coming. I appreciate having you and learning so much from you.
Thank you. It's my pleasure. And I look forward to hearing from your community. And I want to give a great shout out to Iva for putting us together. How fortunate.
Thank you, Iva. We love you. Bye.
Bye now.